And this is Mick, the Doctor of Digital.
And welcome to Love Letters. Love Letters, a collection of love stories that people get lost, get crazy in the name of love. The final scene, Lucy alone on the mom, or let's say the theology of the chrome, sacrificial love in the secular age, cyberpunk, and runners, part 2.
Yes, in part one, we chronicled David Martinez's Red Martyrdom, a tragic Pelagian attempt to buy salvation through the works of chrome and violence. Part two pivots to the white martyrdom of the survivor, where the theological weight shifts from the act of dying to the discipline of witness. From a history of religion's perspective, Lucy's solitary ascent to the moon mirrors the 4th century flight of the desert mothers into the Eremos, an environment where the body, a sacred vessel, is no longer a resource for the state or the city, but a repository for a love that persists beyond the grave. Her silence on the lunar surface functions as a monastic cell, a space where Nietzschean amor fati that resists Night City's obsolescence by transmitting trauma into a liturgical act of memory. In this stillness, which echoes the high, lonesome sound of a 1950s country ballad or a lingering soulful ache of a 1960s lament, we find the culmination of the Christian paradox that when the system has successfully liquidated the beloved, the survivor's memory becomes the ultimate uncommodifiable icon of a personhood that refuses to be erased.
Wow. Interesting, Mr. Mick. So the final scene, Lucy alone in the moon, is heartbreaking. What does her solitary witness tell us about love persists after the beloved is gone?
This is where Edgerunners becomes a profound meditation on what Christian theologians call the communion of saints, the idea that love creates bonds that transcend death, that witness and memory are theological acts, not just psychological ones. Lucy on the moon, alone but carrying David's jacket and the weight of their shared story, embodies a truth early Christianity insisted on. Love doesn't end with death, it transforms into a different mode of presence. Let's start with the scene's visual theology. Lucy sits on the moon, the place that represented shared rest, communion, escape from Night City's logic. She's achieved the geographical location, but experiences it in isolation. She wears David's jacket, the physical remainder of his presence, as she's looking at Earth, the place where their love existed, where David died. The composition is deliberately liminal. She's neither fully in the dream because David isn't there, nor back in Night City because she's escaped. She exists in the space of memory and witness. Early Christian martyrdom literature provides a striking parallel. In the martyrdom of Polycarp, after the saint is executed, the community writes, "We took up his bones, more precious than costly stones and finer than gold, and laid them where it was appropriate. There the Lord will permit us, as far as possible, to gather together in joy and gladness to celebrate the birthday of his martyrdom." The community becomes witnesses to Polycarp's witness. They carry his memory forward not as an ending, but as an ongoing participation in his testimony. Lucy functions similarly. She becomes the witness to David's sacrifice, the bearer of the story, the one who remembers when no one else will. Night City has already forgotten David. He's just another dead edge runner, another failed legend. But Lucy carries the truth of who David was, what he loved, what he sacrificed. In Christian theological terms, she becomes his memorial, his ongoing presence in the world through her remembering. A Greek term is crucial here, usually translated remembrance or memorial, but it means something richer, making present again. In Eucharistic theology, the word describes how the Last Supper isn't just recalled, but represented, made present across time. Jesus commands, "Do this in remembrance of me." Lucy's witness is the same. She doesn't just recall David, she makes his love present through her continued existence. Contemporary psychology on grief and continuing bonds supports this theological reading. Early grief models assumed moving on meant severing connection with the deceased. But researchers like Dennis Klaas and Phyllis Silverman showed that healthy grief often involves maintaining transformed relationships with the dead, not clinging to their physical presence, but carrying their influence, values, and love forward into life. Lucy embodies healthy, continuing bonds. She's not denying David's death or refusing to accept it. She's on the moon, which means she's moved forward geographically and temporally, but she's carrying David with her, his jacket, their shared dreams, the memory of his love. She's neither stuck in the past nor pretending the past doesn't matter. She's living in what theologians call already but not yet. The kingdom is already present in her continued love for David, but not yet fully realized because he's not there. Augustine's Confessions contains a powerful meditation on mourning his friend. My heart was black with grief. Whenever I looked upon had the air of death. I became a puzzle to myself. Augustine eventually realizes that he's mourning not just his friend, but his own mortality, the fundamental instability of all human love. His theological resolution is that only love grounded in the eternal God can withstand death. Lucy's moon scene suggests a secular version of Augustine's resolution. She's not appealing to God or divine eternity, but she's discovered something similar, that genuine love creates a reality that death modifies but doesn't eliminate. David's physical presence is gone, but the fact of their love remains, and Lucy's witness keeps that fact alive in the world. Gregory of Nyssa, writing about the death of his sister Macrina, describes grief as educational. He becomes her witness, carrying forward what she taught him about divine love. Lucy's final position, sitting, watching Earth, wearing David's jacket, is a witness posture. She's not doing, she's being present to the memory. This is contemplative spirituality enacted visually. The Desert Father spoke of stillness as the posture that allows God's presence to be experienced. Lucy's stillness allows David's love to remain present to her. But here's the devastating theological question the scene raises. Is witness enough? Can love that survives the beloved truly be fulfillment, or is it a beautiful failure? Christian eschatology insists on bodily resurrection precisely because witness and memory alone are insufficient. Paul writes, if the dead are not raised, let us eat and drink, for tomorrow we die. If death is final, even a beautiful memory is ultimately tragic. Edgerunners doesn't offer resurrection. Lucy's witness is all that remains. This makes the ending genuinely tragic rather than redemptive. She has the moon, the symbol of rest and communion, but she has it alone. She has David's love, genuine, sacrificial, world changing love, but she has it only in memory. The tragedy isn't that David died, it's that his death makes Lucy's continued existence both meaningful, she carries his love forward, and empty, she carries it alone. The scene also raises questions about the ethics of survival. Why does Lucy survive when David dies? In martyrdom literature, survival is often presented as a burden. You must bear witness, which means you cannot rest. Eusebius's church history is filled with accounts of Christians who survived persecution and spend their remaining years testifying to those who died. They carry the weight of witness as both privilege and curse. Lucy's survival is similar. She gets to experience the moon, but without the person who made the moon meaningful. She gets to remember David's love, but only by living with his absence. The final image suggests that bearing witness to love that survives the beloved is not victory, it's a kind of ongoing crucifixion, necessary, meaningful, but marked by loss. Lucy's solitary witness on the moon reveals that love creates realities that persist beyond death, that witness and memory are theological acts that make the absent present, and that the survival of love doesn't necessarily constitute redemption. Her final position is contemplative rather than active, priestly rather than heroic. She becomes the living memorial to what Night City destroyed. The person who remembers when forgetting would be easier. In conclusion, the scene offers no false comfort. Witness without reunion remains inescapably tragic.
So, Mr. Meg, one of the most unsettling aspect of the night city is how bodies become products, cyberware, upgrades, and replacements. How does these connect to Christians' ideas about bodies as a temple?
The commodification of bodies in edgerunners represents one of late capitalism's most theologically offensive elements: the reduction of human personhood to functional components, the replacement of sacred embodiment with market utility. What makes this particularly tragic is that David's progressive chroming, his literal replacement of flesh with machine, is motivated by love, which means the story dramatizes how even genuine love can be corrupted into self destruction when filtered through commodifying systems. Let's establish the Christian anthropological position clearly. Human personhood is fundamentally embodied. You don't have a body, you are a body. The Nicene Creed explicitly affirms the resurrection of the body, not immortality of the soul. This is crucial. Christianity insists that human identity is inseparable from bodily existence. Gregory of Nyssa writes in On the Soul and Resurrection that the soul's final beatitude requires bodily resurrection because human nature is composite. The soul's power is dissipated when it is deprived of its partnership with the body. Night inverts this completely. Bodies become modular, replaceable, upgradable, more like computers than temples. The Ripperdoc clinics are literally anti churches. Instead of consecrating the body as sacred, they commodify it as hardware. David's journey toward full body replacement epitomizes this theological violation. He progressively erases the embodied particularity that makes him David in pursuit of enhanced function. Tertullian's treatise on the resurrection of the flesh becomes unexpectedly relevant. Writing against Gnostics who divide bodily resurrection, Tertullian argues the flesh is the hinge of salvation. His phrase insists that salvation is through the body, not from it. Material embodiment isn't a prison to escape, it's the means of relationship, transformation, and divine encounter. David's chroming is a kind of neo Gnostic escape attempt. He's trying to transcend his vulnerable flesh by replacing it with durable metal. But this transcendence actually diminishes his personhood. Each upgrade makes him more functional and less personal, more capable but less himself. The final military grade exoskeleton renders him barely human, overwhelmingly powerful but unrecognizable. Contemporary neuroscience supports this theological intuition. One work on embodied cognition shows that consciousness and identity are fundamentally dependent on bodily states and sensory feedback. When David replaces his body with chrome, he's not upgrading his hardware, he's erasing the somatic basis of his personhood. The scene where Lucy touches David's chrome covered arm and recoils is theologically profound. She's not rejecting him, she's mourning the loss of his flesh, the gradual erasure of his embodied particularity. Christian theology has always insisted that love is particular. God doesn't love humanity in general. God loves the specific person in their concrete embodiment. Lucy loves David, which means David's specific body, voice, and touch. Chrome replaces particularity with a generic function. Paul's metaphor of the body as a temple takes on new resonance here. Temples aren't valuable because they're functional, they're valuable because they're holy, set apart, consecrated to divine presence. You don't upgrade a temple's efficiency, you revere its particularity. David treats his body like a tool to be upgraded rather than a temple to be honored. But here's where Night City's theological corruption is most insidious. David's chroming is presented as necessary for survival and protection. You need chrome to compete. You need upgrades to protect those you love. You need to commodify yourself to have market value. The city creates conditions where treating your body as sacred is a luxury you cannot afford. This is structural sin, systems that make virtue impossible and vice necessary. The Christian martyr's refusal was an affirmation of embodied integrity. Your body matters. Your actions are you. You cannot split obedience from identity. Modern Christians often misread martyrdom as dying for beliefs, but it's more fundamental dying to preserve the unity of embodied personhood against systems that would split you into fungible parts. David's tragedy is that he's martyring himself in reverse, progressively dismembering his embodied integrity in service to love. He thinks he's sacrificing himself for Lucy, but he's actually sacrificing himself while preserving function. He becomes more powerful and less personal, more effective and less David. John Chrysostom's homilies on marriage emphasize that spouses honor each other by honoring the body. David thinks he's honoring Lucy by making himself more capable of protecting her body, but he's dishonoring his own body in the process, which means he's actually violating the mutuality Chrysostom describes. Lucy's horror at David's chroming represents the instinctive recognition that bodies aren't tools, they're persons. When she says she just wants him alive, she means alive as David, not alive as a military grade weapon system that used to be David. She's defending the Christian anthropological position. Personhood requires embodied particularity. Functional replacement destroys the person, even as it preserves capability. The final confrontation with Adam's smasher, who is nearly fully cybernetic, dramatizes the endpoint of chroming. Smasher is pure function without personhood, capability without identity. He's what David would become if he survived: powerful, legendary, and empty. He's achieved what Night City defines as success while becoming a theological abomination: function without person, action without soul. Night City's commodification of bodies represents a fundamental theological violation: the replacement of embodied personhood with market utility, the erasure of sacred particularity in favor of generic function. David's tragedy is that he accepts this logic in service to love, progressively dismantling his embodied self to become capable of protecting Lucy's embodied self. In conclusion, the story thus reveals how capitalist systems corrupt even genuine love, turning self sacrifice into self destruction and protection into erasure.
Mr. Meg, you mentioned earlier how David and Lucy can achieve a mutual submission because of their trauma patterns. Can you explore what the story reveals about how a genuine partnership requires more than just love?
This is where Edgerunners becomes an inadvertent case study in why early Christian marriage theology insisted on mutual submission rather than either hierarchy or autonomy. David and Lucy love each other genuinely and deeply, but they cannot achieve the mutual yielding, responsive adaptation, and differentiated unity that characterizes a healthy partnership. The tragedy emerges not from lack of love, but from the inability to coordinate their distinct responses to a hostile world. Let's start with Paul's controversial but frequently misunderstood passage in Ephesians 5. The whole section begins with verse 21: Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. This is the thesis statement. Mutual submission precedes and frames everything that follows. The specific instructions to wives and husbands aren't establishing hierarchy. They're describing how mutual submission manifests differently based on social position and gendered expectations in first century Roman households. What early Christian interpreters like John Chrysostom understood, and what modern readers often miss, is that mutual submission doesn't mean do the same thing, but rather be responsive to each other's needs and states. Chrysostom writes extensively about how this works practically. He commands her to reverence him, and him exhorts to love her. For when the wife sees that he is so enamored with her, she in turn will reverence him. And when he sees all her anxiety directed toward him, he will all the more fulfill the duties of love. Notice the dynamic reciprocity. Each partner's response causes the other's response, creating a virtuous cycle. The wife's reverence inspires the husband's love. The husband's love inspires the wife's reverence. It's mutually causative and complementary. They're doing different things that fit together to create a partnership. David and Lucy attempt something similar, but their trauma prevents the responsive coordination Chrysostom describes. David sees Lucy's fear for him and responds by trying to become more capable of protecting her. Lucy sees David escalating risk taking and responds by trying to shield him from information. Each response, though motivated by love, actually intensifies what the other's fears most. Attachment theory helps us understand why. John Gottman's research on couple dynamics show that healthy relationships require bids for connection that partners successfully receive and respond to. David makes bids for recognition. Look what I accomplished. David and Lucy makes bids for security. Please stop escalating. But neither can receive the other's bid because their nervous systems are activated by different threats. David's bid, I achieved something significant, seeks the response, I see you and you matter. Lucy's bid, I need you to stay alive, seeks the response, I will prioritize our connection over external validation. They're making incompatible bids, his requiring recognition of achievement, hers requiring relinquishment of achievement. Without intervention or growth, they cannot meet each other's bids simultaneously. The Cappadocian Fathers developed a sophisticated theology of differentiation in unity to describe the Trinity, three persons, one essence, each distinct but mutually interpenetrating. Each person of the Trinity remains distinct while sharing one divine nature. Healthy partnerships require something similar, differentiation in unity. David and Lucy are indeed different trauma histories, different attachment styles, different understandings of protection and provision. The problem isn't the difference, it's their inability to maintain distinct responses while coordinating towards shared ends. David tries to absorb Lucy's fear by becoming invulnerable. Lucy tries to absorb David's ambition by managing threats. Neither maintains their distinctive position while coordinating with the other. Contemporary psychology calls this differentiation. Murray Bowen's concept of maintaining a solid sense of self while remaining emotionally connected to others. Differentiated partners can say, I understand you're anxious and I care about your anxiety, but I'm not going to let your anxiety determine my choices. This isn't dismissiveness, it's maintaining one's own center while remaining in a relationship. Lucy attempts differentiation when she tries to get David to leave Night City. She's maintaining her position. Survival matters more than legendary status, despite David's contrary trajectory. But her differentiation breaks down when she starts secretly killing people to protect him. She's now absorbed into managing his choices rather than maintaining her distinct position. Similarly, David attempts differentiation when he pursues legendary status despite Lucy's fear, but his differentiation is false because he's actually driven by anxiety about worthiness, not genuine choice. Augustine's concept of the ordering of loves becomes relevant. Augustine argues that virtue consists not in having no desires, but in ordering desires correctly. David and Lucy have disordered loves, but in opposite directions. David loves Lucy's admiration more than he loves Lucy's presence. He's ordered his loves incorrectly. Validation comes before union, legendary status before survival. Lucy loves David's survival more than she loves truth and transparency. She's ordered her love towards protection at the expense of a genuine partnership. Both orderings seem loving, but are actually distortions. The tragedy of their final misalignment, David thinking Lucy wants him to be special, Lucy simply wanting him alive, crystallizes this failure of mutual submission. True mutual submission would require David to hear, I want you alive, and respond by choosing life. It would require Lucy to say, I've been hiding threats from you, and trust David with the truth. Each would need to maintain their distinct position while yielding to the other's need. Early Christian ascetic literature, particularly the sayings of the Desert Fathers, contains multiple stories about the necessity of both solitude and community, both individual spiritual practice and mutual submission to spiritual directors. The Desert Fathers weren't isolated hermits. They were members of communities who balanced autonomy with obedience, self-knowledge with spiritual direction. David and Lucy cannot achieve this integration. They're either absorbed into each other's fears, losing identity, or isolated in their distinct responses, losing connection. The story's ending suggests that mutual submission cannot be achieved solely through good intentions or even genuine love. It requires what the Christian tradition calls the fundamental reorientation, change of mind and heart. David would need to stop measuring his worth through achievement. Lucy would need to stop managing reality for David. Both would need therapeutic intervention, trauma healing, nervous system regulation, things Night City systemically denies. In conclusion, the story thus exposes capitalism's assault on personhood extends to relationships by creating conditions that prevent healing, growth, and coordination. Night City makes love itself tragic.
On final question, Mr. Meg, Lucy survives, she lives, she carries David's memory forward. What does her endurance, her continued existence after devastating loss, reveal about patience as theological virtue?
This is where Edgerunners becomes profoundly, perhaps accidentally, Christian in its final statement. Lucy's survival and witness represents what early Christian theology called patient endurance, the virtue of remaining faithful through suffering without knowing when or if relief will come. Her final scene on the moon is not victory or defeat, it's the posture of endurance itself. And that posture carries theological weight that secular frameworks often miss. Let's start with the biblical concept of patience. The Greek term for patience appears repeatedly in New Testament writings, usually translated patience, endurance, or perseverance, but it means something more specific. It's the virtue of not fleeing suffering but remaining present to it, allowing it to do its transformative work. James writes, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you can be mature and complete." Lucy embodies this precisely. She doesn't escape suffering by forgetting David or pretending the moon is enough. She remains present to the loss, sits with it, allows it to exist without resolution. The final scene shows her simply being on the moon, not doing, not achieving, not resolving, just enduring. This is enacted visually. Early Christian martyrdom literature presents patience as the supreme virtue, the one that enables all others. Tertullian writes an entire treatise, De Patientia, arguing that patience is the highest and most perfect fruit of faith because it makes endurance of suffering possible. Tertullian understands that without patience, every other virtue collapses under pressure. Lucy's survival is her patience made visible. She hasn't moved on, gotten over it, or found closure. Those are contemporary therapeutic concepts foreign to early Christian thought. Instead, she's remaining with the loss, carrying it forward, allowing it to exist as a permanent reality. She's practicing patience not as passive acceptance, but as active endurance, choosing continued existence even when existence means carrying unbearable weight. Contemporary trauma research, particularly Judith Herman's work on complex PTSD and recovery, shows that healing from profound loss requires what she calls remembrance and mourning, the sustained work of integrating traumatic experience into narrative and identity. Lucy's moon scene represents this integration. She's not disassociating from the loss or being consumed by it, she's holding it as part of who she is now. But here's where Christian theology adds depth that psychology alone cannot provide. Patience isn't just about personal healing, it's about witness to transcendent meaning. Lucy's endurance testifies that David's love mattered, that their connection wasn't nullified by his death, that meaning persists even when the source of meaning is gone. Her patience is eschatological. She's waiting for nothing in particular, but her waiting itself affirms that something beyond Night City's logic exists. Lucy's continued grief, her inability to experience the moon as complete without David, is witnessed. She's refused cheap consolation, declining to pretend the dream is fulfilled just because she's physically present. Her dissatisfaction testifies that the moon's meaning was always relational, never merely locational. Lucy's patience transforms her. She's no longer the person trying to escape Night City with David. She's the person who carries David's memory forward, who's achieved the dream and found it insufficient, who knows both love's reality and love's limitation. Her endurance has made her into something new, not better or worse, but different, marked by loss in ways that constitute her identity now. Edgerunners offers no such promising result. Lucy's patience has no horizon. She's not waiting for resurrection or reunion. She's simply enduring because what else can one do? This makes her patience more tragic than Christian patience. It's endurance without hope, witness without audience, meaning making without assured meaning. Lucy's moon is her desert. She's removed from Night City's corrupting logic, alone with memory and loss, enduring. Like the desert father, she's not accomplishing anything measurable. She's simply remaining present to what was, present to what is, perhaps open to what might emerge from sustained presence. Contemporary grief theory, particularly the work of Thomas Attig on relearning the world, suggests that profound loss requires reconstructing one's entire framework of meaning. And Lucy's survival and patient endurance reveal that witness to love, carrying forward the memory and meaning of connection even after the connected person is gone, constitutes a kind of vocational calling. Her patience isn't a passive acceptance, but active resistance to Night City's logic of forgetting and replacement. She refuses to move on, get over it, or commodify her grief. Instead, she bears the weight of memory as both burden and privilege, making David's love present through her continued existence. Her final scene offers no resolution, only endurance, and suggests that endurance itself, the refusal to let loss be the final word, even when no resurrection is promised, might be the most profound form of love available in systems designed to make love impossible. In conclusion, Lucy sits on the moon, alone but not abandoned, carrying what cannot be carried but must be carried, and in that impossible carrying, she becomes the story's final theological statement. Love persists not because it conquers death, but because someone chooses to remember, to witness, to remain.
To witness and to remain. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Mr. Mike. Thank you. The theology of the poem Sacrificial Love in the Secular Age, Cyberpunk, Edgerunners Part 2 deepens the exploration of love, loss, and meaning within the hyper-technological world that has been largely abandoned and transcendence. This continuation examines how acts of sacrifice emerge not as a religious rituals, but as a deeply human response of alienation, commodification, and impermanence. Mr. Meg, would you like to plug in something?
Thanks for the opportunity. Write the book, grow the business. Connect with me on LinkedIn, GMIC, the Dr. Digital Smith, PhD. Listen to the Dr. Digital podcast. Pick up a couple volumes I have on Amazon. That's Burning America and On Track, Ian Hunter.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Meg, the Doctor Digital, and please do listen to our other podcasts, Music 101, Sex 101, and of course, our baby podcast, Mental Health 101. So, Mr. Meg, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, my friend. Until next time, day is old.
Maricom people, see you soon.